Welcome back, everyone, to the What Worked For Me podcast. Today we have Jodi, who has successfully lost about 95 pounds, has had a really great story. I'm going to put all of her links in the description of this video so you can go down and find her. She's mostly on Instagram, has a bunch of great health and fitness tips. Jodi, thank you so much for coming on the show today. We're happy to
Thank
have
you.
you.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so we talked a little bit about your story before this, and you said you got all the way up to 230 pounds. And
hmm
you're only 5'3", so that's a good amount of weight on that frame. Did you start out bigger or did you gain weight later in life? How did your weight progress up to that point?
I have been struggling with my weight my entire life, but 231 was the heaviest I got. I grew up and I was a chunky kid growing up. I had a mother that, believe it or not, was a Weight Watchers leader in the 80s and would try to put me on a diet back then. And I was just yo-yo dieting and my weight was constantly an issue.
Yeah, I think that's hard. I think there's a lot of research to show that sometimes too much pressure from parents can be a negative thing. Did you think that kind of affected it as you were growing up, having like the constant pressure?
Absolutely. Because back then it wasn't like about being healthy, it was about losing weight, and they're not one and the same at all.
No, no, not at all. Sorry I had to go through that. That's always pretty rough. So, how old were you when you hit like the 231 mark?
I was 35 years old, and my wake up call, I at that point I had given up trying to lose weight because it was a lot of hard feelings and struggles to get that hopeful feeling like I'm going to get on this ultra restrictive diet and I'm going to do it. And then,
Right.
when that, goes down in flames, you get upset and you feel hopeless. So I told myself, I'm just going to accept that I'm always going to be big until I started feeling heart palpitations at 35 years old. And I'm like, wow, like this doesn't feel normal at all. So I made an appointment with my doctor and they put me on an EKG machine. Long story short, I was diagnosed with high blood pressure. And that scared me to no end because I grew up with a parent that was in and out of the hospital constantly with a big tub of medications. And I didn't want that to be the norm that my kids saw. So I'm like, I need to do something now to fix this.
Yeah, I think when you have the previous history in the family, those things can be really, really scary. So, what was your first step in trying to turn things around?
I really didn't want to track my food. So I thought, you know what? I'll just make what I think is going to be better choices with no knowledge, no background, nothing. And
Just
I'm
winging
just going
it?
to go to the gym. Like the first month, the most I lost was 5 pounds. When you're starting at that weight, 5 pounds is not a lot for a month. So
Yeah. How did that feel? Was that a happy moment then, or was that kind of disappointing when were you just happy to see things move?
I was disappointed because I felt like if I'm going to the gym, not that I knew what I was doing at the gym, it was like whatever machine scared me the least at that day is what I would get on.
Right,
But I'm like, if I'm going to go to the gym this many times a week, I should see more movement than 5 pounds in a month.
right. And I think that can be kind of tricky. So, at that point, did you realize like, okay, I got to start looking into this a little bit more and coming up with a better plan?
Yeah, I decided to hit pause on the exercise and focus on nutrition because it's overwhelming to try to change every single unhealthy habit you have
Right.
all at once. So I decided to focus on nutrition. Reluctantly, I wish I would have chose differently, but I started with Weight Watchers, despite what I told you with how I grew up with mom who was a Weight Watchers leader.
Always
I
go
had
back
a
to your
group of
roots, right?
mom Exactly. I had a group of mom friends and a couple of them were doing Weight Watchers. So that was the mindset like, hey, at least if I start this, I know two other people who are doing this programs that I can get advice from. And that's where I started.
Okay. So you started out with Weight Watchers. At that point, did you start to lose weight quicker?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I probably, in the next couple of months, I was down maybe 15, 20 pounds. So I
Okay.
was seeing movement there.
And then that probably started making you feel a little better. Was that?
Exactly. And once that became more of a routine, I maybe a year later is when I would start going to the gym and kind of try to work on building consistency with being at the gym on top of my nutrition.
Okay. And as we're talking about nutrition, it sounds like you eventually separated from Weight Watchers. That you and that program had a little bit of a breakup. What was the thing that caused you to move away from that and try something new?
It took me a long time. I had a friend of mine that they originally started with Weight Watchers and they were big into lifting, like I was starting to be. And they said, you should probably look at macros instead. But then the pandemic happened and quarantine happened. And I needed that comfort of knowing what I was doing. I didn't want to change something else on top of everything around me changing. So I stuck with it until I decided to do a 60-day accountability challenge through my CrossFit gym. And you were supposed to give up something during that 60 days. So I'm like, people are picking candy or picking alcohol. I'm like, I'm giving up Weight Watchers because I'm like, worst case scenario, if I don't like it, I can go back to it in 60 days. And after 1 week, I was like, yeah, I'm never going back because when I was on Weight Watchers, I was unintentionally eating too low carb and I was working out like 6 days a week, including CrossFit, including strength training. And I was constantly tired and taking naps. And I just thought, it's because I'm in my 40s
Right.
that I'm tired. But once I started eating like more carbs, I had more energy and I wasn't napping as much as I was. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going back to tracking points and
Yeah,
trying to
just
figure it out.
a little bit more detailed. So that was the biggest change out of the front was you just increased carbs
Mm-hmm.
a lot, and that helped. I'm sure that helped a bunch with training, having more
Yeah.
source in your diet. So how was it learning macros? Was it tricky? What was it like those first couple of weeks trying to figure out what was in everything? Or was it pretty close? Did you kind of have a background already because of Weight Watchers?
I kind of had a little bit of a background for the most part, even back then and even currently. I mainly focus on my protein and let the other two macros fall where they are. And I do look at fiber, which I know is not a macro, but to me, that is
Right.
extremely important. And between the protein and the fiber, that helps keep me fuller longer.
Right. Yeah. Those are by far like the best ways to stay satiated. And so by the time you switched to macros, had you had lost the full 95 pounds then, or where were you at?
Uh, I was probably about more around 85 pounds.
Okay.
So when I made that switch, I didn't realize how over restrictive I was being on Weight Watchers. Like I wouldn't eat things like avocado because the plan at Weight Watchers at the time, avocados had too many points or this food had points if it became a smoothie. And like I would just avoid them altogether. And I felt like I had more freedom and I was falling in love with the foods that I used to enjoy before Weight Watchers points was a thing in my life.
Right. Let's talk about that because I think that's a big hurdle for a lot of people when they try to start eating healthy is they kind of switch one vice for another vice and they get hyper focused on food. How were you able to balance re-falling in love with food without regaining weight?
I think for me, because at that point I had already made significant change where I was liking the results. I was feeling more confident in my body. Not necessarily because I lost weight, but before I wasn't treating my body like somebody I loved. I wasn't prioritizing my health. And when you shift that mindset, you feel differently about yourself and you want to be heard, you want to take up space and you're more confident in who you are. And it's like to me, there's no going back from that.
Right.
And I didn't want to go back on medication. I had probably kicked the medication maybe within the first 2 years of my journey. So it's like that's always going to be in my back of my mind. Like, yes, I reversed it, but if I go back to the old way, I could find myself back getting on the medication and possibly opening the door for future issues.
So so basically just kind of the fear of going back. You,
Hmm.
you kept yourself in the position where you're like, okay, I'm going to give myself some leeway to play around with foods and see how they make me feel.
Hmm.
But then without going back and kind of keeping that fear in the back of your mind. It sounds like, because you said you keep protein stable and then you let carbs and fats kind of fluctuate. Usually that's somewhat of an intuitive approach. Was it hard for you to go from like a point system into more of an intuitive approach to food?
It felt like I was cheating in a way because it was like on Weight Watchers, this wasn't a good idea, this food, but now all of a sudden it is. But I think I adjusted pretty quickly to it because I felt like I had more options than I did before with food.
That makes sense. And so how long did it take you to lose the full 95 pounds?
I would say 3 or 4 years into it.
Okay, so you were going slow and steady, feeling it was going really well that way.
Hmm.
During that time period, did you hit any plateaus or sticking points?
Yes and no. I thought I went through a plateau because for a year I was gaining and losing the same 1 or 2 pounds sporadically. And I at most that year I lost 12 pounds. So I thought I would hit a plateau. And if it wasn't for that health scare, I probably would have thrown in the towel, to be completely honest. But that health scare kept me like, I have to keep going no matter what. But when I had family portraits done, the difference between the year before and that following year with only 12 pounds was night and day. I didn't realize that body recomp was a thing,
Yeah,
that I was gaining muscle and losing body fat at the same time. So the scale made it sound like I wasn't making progress, but if I would have paid attention to photo progress or taken measurements or kept track of non-scale victories, it would have told me a different story.
right. I think that's a trap everyone can fall into where they get a little hyper fixated on the scale. How are you able to separate yourself away from that kind of obsessive behavior over the scale?
Um, I think the problem is, especially women, we're told that we need that number to go down no matter what. But what we're not told is how common fluctuations are. So it was really understanding that even if you are 100% perfect on your training and your nutrition, fluctuations are normal for a variety of reasons that have nothing to do with I'm not doing enough for myself. It doesn't mean you're gaining body fat, but I have also gone through periods where I haven't gotten on the scale because the number was messing with my head. So it's a lot of work within yourself to really understand that that's normal. It does not mean failure, that it could be that you had too much sodium. It could be that you had too many carbs. Not that that causes weight gain, but water retention. So I think we need to realize it's if you use the scale as a measurement for your self-worth, then get off the scale and don't get on it again. But if you can learn to look at it as one form of data, then I think there's nothing wrong with using the scale, but it should never be the only measurement that you're using to track success.
Yeah, I really agree with that. You said there was times where you just had to take a break from weighing yourself. When could you kind of draw that line like, okay, this is more trouble than it's worth?
When I was realizing it was dictating my mood for the day, that like, and I would get on first thing in the morning, so it's like if it goes up, well, then I'm going to be miserable today. And if it goes down, then we're good. And that's not, that's no way to live at
No,
all.
probably not very healthy. That's
No.
yeah. So you brought up like kind of body recomposition and gaining muscle and those type of things. You also brought up the fact that with women always being smaller is kind of what is pushed. It sounds like for the last little bit you've been maintaining around the same
Mhm.
weight. How did you decide when to stop losing?
Ah, that's a good question. Um, I think because my goals now are specific to athletic now. I'm the if I'm a size 6 right now, I don't need to be smaller than that. I'm happy with my body. I'm more interested in learning how to do this at the gym or hitting that PR or that goal. It's funny how that flip-flops. Like I used to focus on this number on the scale going down. Now I'm just like, oh, the number on my barbell just went up. That's pretty cool.
Right. So you to a certain degree you just kind of replaced it, and then it sounds like you just realized, okay, getting smaller isn't going to help my athletic performance anymore, and so
Exactly.
then you just stayed. Now you're kind of sitting there. And how long have you maintained? You said you're right around like 130, right? How long?
137,
137. How long have you been maintaining that for?
about 2 or 3 years.
That's great. That's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
What do you think was your some of your key points to being able to maintain for 2 to 3 years? Because it's really rare. I don't think people realize how rare it is actually to not regain weight. This puts you really as an outlier.
I think because of my why for starting, it had to do with a health scare and health reasons. It wasn't about how do I lose weight as quick as possible, which unfortunately is a very common question that gets asked on social media. How do I lose weight as soon as possible? And because I did it slow and steady and building healthy habits, I don't even have to think about, am I going to work out today? It's like part of my habit,
Yeah.
it's what I do every day. It's like you don't have to think about brushing your teeth. I don't have to think about focusing on eating mostly high nutrient dense foods or getting movement in the day. So I think slow and steady while trying to build healthy habits is the huge difference.
I really like that. What did you do to successfully build those habits?
Um, I focused on process goals instead of just focusing on, I want to lose 50 pounds. It's like, no, what steps do I need to take? Is it hitting 10,000 steps? Is it drinking enough water? Is it hitting my protein? And you make those goals that you write down and check off. So you get that hit of dopamine in your brain, like, I did something
Right.
successful. Because to me, that's how you build momentum. It's like, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. If you only focus on the big goal, which could take years or months, that's defeating in a bit.
No, it really is, especially when you're, looking at losing 95 pounds like you did. And I'm sure that probably helped kind of fight that battle of trying to lose weight as quick as you can and, that pitfall that people fall into. You brought up the fact that there's maybe some like emotional ties to too much pressure, earlier in life that you felt made weight gain easier. Did you have to process through that as you were losing weight?
Um, Not so much. I think the issue is making it more about weight instead of making it more about health, because that was the message like I heard constantly growing up is lose weight, not how to take care of yourself. Um, I remember there was a year that before my health scare, I was completely stressed out, was going through a difficult time, and I lost 20 pounds real fast. And a friend of mine knew the issues I was dealing with, like the amount of stress. And the first thing they said was, well, at least you lost weight. To me, that was like,
Yeah.
that was the most important thing. I'm kind of falling apart mentally, but like, at least you lost weight. And it's just like, those are the messages we hear. And that's not healthy. It's not sustainable. And that's the most important thing is it has to be sustainable for somebody.
I really, really agree with that. How how are you able to differentiate as because it's trial and error? How are you able to
Mm-hmm.
differentiate between things that you're like, this might work, but this isn't going to work long term, and find the things that work for you long term and you could sustain?
I think you actually have to sit back and ask, does this make sense for the rest of my life? Because I know some people, they'll try to come up with this perfect plan, and it's based off of everything in their life is going perfectly to plan, that the birds are singing, the clouds are,
Sunshine and rainbows.
exactly. It has to be sustainable even when life is normal and hectic and there's bumps along the way. Like, I've had people say, I'm going to do the soup diet. Well, what's the soup diet? I'm going to eat nothing but soup every day. I'm like, do you really think that you can live off of only eating soup for the rest of your life? Like,
Right.
you
Melted ice
have
cream
to,
doesn't count as soup, right?
exactly. And it's just like, can you really do that? Can you really see yourself doing that for the rest of your life?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people fail to do that. They think they wait for the perfect time to get started. And then, well, okay, what happens when things aren't perfect in the moment? Are you
Yeah.
going to quit?
Yeah. No, I think that's definitely a common problem people run into. So as far you brought up that you do a lot of strength training and that type of
Mm-hmm.
stuff now, how did that progress during this transformation? Because you went from what's the least scary machine to now there's more weight on the barbell. So we have a lot to cover there during that jump. So let's talk about how exercise changed during this period.
Sure. What like I mentioned, it was whatever machine scared me the least. Whenever I would go to the gym, the personal trainers at that gym look like they would rather be anywhere but there. So like that was never an option in my brain, because just walking in the gym was scary enough. Like, you get that fear that everybody's going to be watching me, everybody's going to be laughing at me. So I started with a fitness app called Fitbod, because it actually told me what workouts to do based off of what equipment was there, and it would actually show me a little video on how to do it. So
Okay.
it gave me the chance to work up my confidence. Like, I wouldn't do free weights even with that app at first. I wanted to get more familiar with the machines, and then eventually I would slowly work in free weights, and then I eventually joined a HIT gym, and then I was able to learn more, and I haven't turned back since.
How, I think the fear of the gym is common for a lot of people. How are you able to overcome that and put yourself out there?
I think it's scary how common gym anxiety is, and it doesn't help that there are videos on TikTok of people recording people. That
Yeah.
Joey Swole, I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's constantly calling out people out for recording people at the gym. But that has not been my experience at all. For the amount of time I've spent working out at a gym, real gym culture, people are usually in their own world. They're not paying attention to you unless you're in their space. If you're
Right.
interfering with their machine, then they're going to pay attention to you. But real gym culture is everybody is the main character in their own story, and you're just background noise to
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. Everyone's just there thinking about themselves for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
So you started with the HIT gym. So this was probably like lead classes. Is that what I'm kind of assuming? Was that
Yeah, like a half hour classes, but then I would also lift on my own, continuing using the Fitbot app to kind of do my own thing.
okay? When did you start actually using free weights and getting into training that way?
Probably my third year into my journey. I also wound up getting free weights at home. So, like, when I had that gym anxiety of people are going to look at me, at least I could still build that confidence of using them in my own space in the privacy of my home too.
Yeah. I love at-home workouts. I think they're always a good a good option. So what are you doing now as far as exercise goes? Has it still progressed from the HIT classes? Is it different now?
Instead of HIT classes, I do CrossFit 3 times a week, but I still lift on my own 3 times a week as well.
It sounds like at some point you went from really being motivated by fear and like running away from health issues to being
Hmm.
a little bit more motivated by passion and chasing health, the health benefits.
Hmm.
Can you take us through what that process was like and how that motivation handoff happened?
I think it's just as when I started seeing a little bit of progress forward, to me, that's motivational on its own to see, like, hey, I'm actually making changes. Like, when I first started, I never set out to lose as much weight as I did. To me, I was being a little bit ridiculous with my hopefulness with the idea of getting under 200. Like, I didn't even think that was even potentially possible whatsoever. And I think it's just figuring out, like, hey, everybody that is successful on their journey, they're not 100% perfect every single day. And I don't know why it took me a long time to realize that. Like, you think the people that you see online that they are so 100% disciplined every single day that they never have a cookie, they never miss a day at the gym. And that's not reality at all.
Yeah,
And really understanding that and realizing that you really don't mess this up unless you quit and give up altogether.
I really like that. So you've come a long, long way. 4 to 6 years, huge health transformation. You should be really proud of yourself. Looking back, what do you think were some of your biggest mistakes or like the hardest lessons that you had to learn?
I think the hardest lessons I had to learn is not being over restrictive and choosing the right words when it comes to food. I used to follow an all or nothing mindset, and I would say this food was good, this food was bad. And I would over restrict myself, avoiding bad foods. And then I would wind up losing control and binging, feeling guilty, feeling like a failure, and then going back to over restricting. I actually saw more success when I stopped that mindset and said, you know what? That food is high nutrient dense and that's low nutrient dense. It's okay if I have a piece of candy and track it in my calories. And guess what? I'm more in control of my food and my cravings. I'm
Yeah,
not beating myself up for being an imperfect human being.
right.
It makes a huge difference. And like, to me, that's another lesson learned is your word choices matter. Like, you cannot expect perfection. You can't expect everything to go according to plan and then beat yourself up and talk to yourself in a way that you would probably smack a stranger for talking to you that way, you know?
Right. What were some of the words that you had to switch out? So you talked about, healthy and unhealthy or good and bad food. Take us through some of the other ones that really helped you reframe your approach to nutrition.
I think it's the mindset, like, that person has it together and I don't. And to me, that comparison, that wasn't helping me at all. Like, I even have to remind myself when I start to compare myself to somebody else, like, hey, we're not going to do that. That person has nothing to do with my journey. Good for them if they are doing what they need to do on their, but they don't dictate my success. Stop looking at that person.
Yeah, what is it? The comparison is the thief of joy or something like
Yeah.
that. Those sayings. During these transformations, sometimes people will experience like body dysmorphia or like not seeing changes. And it sounded like you kind of felt that during that one plateau year until you
Mhm.
saw the pictures. Did you ever experience that? Or do you experience that now?
Not as much as I used to, but one of my friends that I met through an online fitness community, her and I both kind of leaned into each other because she would struggle with body dysmorphia issues and I would too. I would notice that if I was stressed out in my personal life, I would tend to have more body image issues when I would look in the mirror. Like, I would be at the gym, look in the mirror. Before I left the house, my outfit was fine. Then all of a sudden, I'm tugging on my shirt constantly, and I hate the way I look. And we started talking to each other, and we actually at one point had support group sessions on Zoom to talk about these issues, to kind of normalize it, because I think that's the bigger issue is when we don't talk about them.
Right.
It's such a lonely feeling when we're struggling with this issue. And then you think, what is wrong with me? Nobody else is going through that comparison of assumption.
Yeah.
And by talking about it, there's power in vulnerability. If you normalize it, like it might not take it completely away, but you feel seen and understood and heard. And the crazy part is, it's not specific to one body type or one gender. We've had guys in the support sessions, and it's eye opening how many people experience these issues.
Yeah. I think it's definitely one of like the hurdles almost everyone has to get over as they start focusing on health. What were some of the things outside of the support group that you had to apply to find a healthier body image?
I think there's power in looking back at some of the things that I couldn't do before that I can do now. So it's not always about what my body looks. It's like, hey, I can do handstand push-ups where before I couldn't even do push-ups on my toes. Or
That's awesome.
hey, yeah. And it's like it's crazy how far we can push ourselves when, the sky's the limit. But it's, to me, worth writing down. Like when we have those wins, like, hey, I was the first one to finish that workout in class, or hey, I just PR'd that deadlift. To me, write those down, because it's a nice thing to look back when you're struggling to be like, hey, I'm kicking ass. Look
Yeah,
at all the stuff that a different version of me wouldn't have dreamed of being able to do. And this is everything that I've been able to do.
I like that. Kind of count the wins mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Focus on the good. You brought up stress. You said that when you were more stressed, it made the body image things worse. A lot of times, people who are larger have an emotional tie to food, and when you remove that, it can be hard. Did you have to find other coping mechanisms for stress once you got rid of food?
Um, Unintentionally, I remember feeling mad, angry. I might have been mad at my husband, who knows? But I remember
He
I
probably
left the
deserved
house.
it. He probably deserved
Probably. I remember
it.
driving to the gym pissed off, and it's like, wait a minute, I'm driving to the gym when I'm angry instead of just going to the pantry. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So exercise became kind of your stress relief.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we're talking about using exercise as a stress relief. How did you get through the moments when like you couldn't just go exercise, right? Because like that's one of the benefits of, using a cookie maybe is it's always easy to go grab. Not saying it's healthy, but how do you get through the day-to-day moments with stress?
I mean, to be honest, I'm lucky because I'm either at the gym. I started working at a gym recently. It's like I'm surrounded by exercise equipment, but I think it's having that one or two people in your life that you can talk about anything and there's no judgment, but they're not going to just tell you what you want to hear either. To me, having that outlet is important too.
Yeah, like a really good social network and some support there.
Yeah.
So you talked about now, you work at a gym. It sounds like you spend a lot of time there. It seems like you've really adopted really a new lifestyle. How was the shift in identity from going from, you described yourself as like a thicker, chunky person at the beginning of this podcast to now, now you're doing handstand push-ups and, you know, was there, was, I assume there's an identity shift there. How did that like proceed from beginning to end?
um one of my favorite examples of how fitness and taking care of myself has spilled into other areas of my life is a year before quarantine, I went skydiving and I went parasailing by myself and I flew across country on a quick trip, all within like a 3 month span. Because what I have learned that if it's something I really want to do, I am capable of doing it. I just have to put the steps into motion instead of just wishing. Because like skydiving was one of those things where I would say, one day I'll do it. Just like I used to say, one day I'll lose weight. One day I'll become a gym person. And like I wouldn't actually put any actions into to making that a reality. And it's
Yeah,
like, no, I can do hard stuff. So if this is something I really want to do, I'm fully capable of doing it. And I did.
that's awesome. How did you, they always say the one day to day one, right? Switching that out. How did you switch that and stop procrastinating your life and learn how to just act and start going after it?
I think it's just going back to thinking if I don't do something, what's going to happen? How is that going to impact me? How is that going to impact my family members, my loved ones, my kids? They need that example because they're not going to do something because I tell them to do it. They're going to do it because they see me doing it. They're going to model my behavior, not my what I tell them to do.
I really like that. How has this change affected like your family relationships and your interactions with your kids? Have you noticed a difference?
Um, it's funny, right before my youngest turned 10, my oldest said, "Hey, you're about to enter double digit years. And you're probably going to die double digit years. It's very rare to get to triple digit years." Then he goes, "I bet mom will make it to triple digit years." I'm like, "Why?" He's like, "Because you take very good care of yourself, mom." And it's like, okay. I mean, they don't always eat the foods. I wish they would, eat more fruits and vegetables, not good or bad foods, but just, high nutrient dense foods. But at least they are seeing that, I am healthy. I am prioritizing my health. So I have hope that they'll follow in my footsteps.
Good. I like that. Do you do you have to, I know you said growing up with like kind of the mom who was in Weight Watchers wasn't the most healthy thing for you psychologically. How have you navigated that differently within your own family?
Um, I choose my words carefully. And I don't say a food is good or bad, like I said before, but I'm very happy that I don't over restrict anymore because it would be a very bad thing for them to see me freaking out about the idea of eating a cookie or a piece of candy. And that would teach them, oh, that's good or that's bad. And I don't want them to have the food issues that I grew up with. So to me finding that balance is going to be better for them. So they don't walk in my footsteps of a bad relationship with food.
No, I really like that. I think that's a much healthier way to approach it and kind of lead by example that way. It sounds like you gained a lot of confidence during this, and most of it was like almost everything was better. Was there any negatives that you didn't see coming?
I know I've had people who have lost weight like me have had the exact opposite experience, but I lost friends during my weight loss transformation. I've heard people say that people treated them nicer after they've lost weight. People have said some really nasty things to me because I've lost the weight. Like somebody asked a colleague of mine if I had cancer, and that's how I lost the weight.
Oh,
Or,
that's rough.
right? It's like, wow. Or, oh, you're disappearing. Oh, you're eating like a rabbit. I had friends, the friends that were on Weight Watchers, we were accountability friends in the beginning, and they would fall off I'll fall off track, and I would keep going because my health scare was important. I had a reason to keep going where they would keep falling off the wagon, getting back on, falling off, getting back on. And they would say things like, you eat like a rabbit, you're disappearing. And I think there's a lot of jealousy with some people. And I know that might sound conceited, but I've heard people say, "Oh, you're lucky that you've lost weight." I'm sorry, did I trip and fall in the the fat just rolled off.
Yeah.
I worked my butt off. But if they say luck, that lets them off the hook for when they say they want XYZ in life without putting into the work. If they chalk it up to luck for me, well, that lets them off the hook a bit.
No, I totally agree with that. That can be really hard to navigate. How did you handle negative social pressure during the transformation?
As much as quarantine was hard, it was kind of a nice mental break to not be around people because I would hear some of these comments at work
Yeah.
and you can't like snap because it's work.
Yeah.
So it to me it was just like I can be myself.
Yeah. And kind of that social distancing was actually very, very well timed.
Right?
So that's awesome. I think that's for the most part everything I wanted to talk about. Is there anything else you'd like to touch on before we wrap up?
Um I think it's important to realize like if I had to start this journey all over again, there are a couple things I would do differently, but I don't regret starting. I think everybody tries to wait for that perfect plan, but there is no perfect plan. If I started over tomorrow, I bet 5 years from then, I would do things differently from that point. You're always learning and adapting, and sometimes you have to pivot, but you can't steer a parked car. So, one step at a time.
Right. I really like that. I think that's a great note to end on. I don't think I can add anything better than what you just said. So thank you so much for coming on the show. I really hope that I really know that your story is going to help all of our listeners. So thank you so much. And we'll just kind of end it there.
Great. Thank you.
All right.